Unless you're a first responder or someone else who works in the medical field, you probably wouldn't expect to hear calls for help on your average workday. So when Oregon UPS driver Lee Purdy heard the words, "Help me. Help me," coming loud and clear from a house where he was making a delivery, he knew his workday had just taken a turn. With a sense of unease, Lee had his wife notified the police, hoping they could rescue whoever was in such dire straits. When the police arrived, however, they found a situation that had them doubling over with laughter. For a UPS or delivery driver, the day-to-day tasks of the job don't change too often. Every day, you make sure packages are delivered safely and securely to businesses and residences alike. But Oregon UPS driver Lee Purdy recently faced a situation that didn't quite fit his job description. It was a late November evening when Lee hopped out of his truck, package in hand, and heard cries of "Help me! Help me!" coming from the residents. Something didn't seem right about the voice calling for help either. Still, it's not every day you hear screaming while you're at work. The situation weighing heavy on his mind, Lee called his wife, who in turn called the non-emergency police hotline. When officers arrived at the scene, they found things weren't what they seemed. When the police arrived, Lee still stood on the property, clearly nervous about what was going on inside the house. "I asked them, the police, to do a courtesy check to make sure nothing weird was going on," Lee told Today. So they did just that. The deputies were able to contact the owner and gain entrance into the residence. Brian Jensen, the public information officer for Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, told CBS News. Inside, they didn't find a murder scene or a fallen elderly person. Instead, they found that it was just a parrot named Diego. "We're thankful. It's super funny," Brian said. He and some of the other officers even had some laughs at responding officer Deputy Hayden Sanders' expense. "We're just glad that no one, including the bird, actually needed any help," he added. Lee said that he'd originally suspected the voice was a parrot, but some other possibilities played out in his mind. He told Fox News, "I was a little concerned at first that maybe an older person had fallen and couldn't get up, was yelling for help, and maybe the bird heard and started copying that." With a sense of relief, Lee still had one last lingering question: why was Diego yelling "help me" in the first place? Had he been mimicking the words of an abused owner? Or was the parrot himself abused to the point that he regularly called for help? The parrot's owner, Susan Baird, clarified those questions for the concerned delivery driver. "When I got the call from the county sheriff," Susan told Fox 12 Oregon, "I was very amused because Diego is such a personality. He is very people-oriented," Susan explained to Inside Edition. "He likes to have people around. He is very affectionate. When he's alone, he will often yell 'help me' because he doesn't like to be alone." Talk about the parrot who cried wolf. And wouldn't you know it, Diego, who was an impressive 41 years old, was a bird of many talents. Not only could he call for help with all the veracity and gusto of a damsel in distress, but he could also imitate a cat's meow and a barking dog too. Apparently, it wasn't the first time Diego left people concerned after calling for help. Susan recalled another instance where she was entertaining guests in another room and could hear a distant voice begging for attention. Talk about a mama's boy. Susan was out of town when the situation happened, and Diego had just started to miss her, so he called out for help. It was no wonder why the bird couldn't stand to be separated from Susan for long. She's owned the green and yellow parrot for 2 decades. While Susan's daughter had been watching the parrot for her, Diego still couldn't help but feel a bit lonely. When he heard the UPS driver walking up to the front door, Susan speculated that he might have thought it was her and started calling out in glee. As for the Clackamas County Police, rather than feel like anyone wasted their time, the officers were all smiles about the story. The department even shared a picture on Twitter of the responding officer, Deputy Sanders, with Diego. Of course, it received all kinds of positive attention. You have to imagine that as a police officer, it's nice to get called into a situation like this where you can laugh at the end. We all needed a light-hearted moment, Brian Jensen, the public information officer, told Today. That's what this provides. It's the wild kingdom here.